What's up, guys? It's set for us today. Gonna jump right into it. We're gonna talk a little bit about Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So you're probably wondering, well, why are you playing Call of Duty if you're gonna talk about a Pokemon game? Two completely different consoles, two completely different games. Well, I feel like Pokemon, when you're watching it, can be kind of boring, especially if you've already played it. Kind of tends to be something you've already played. Maybe you're watching the VGC. That's entertaining, but overall, it's not as entertaining to watch as it is to play. So I'm gonna play some Call of Duty. Just gonna talk about it, review the DLC, the overall game. Now that we have the epilogue and we're just kind of waiting to see what happens next. Little thing about me, I tend to play a little bit everything. So Call of Duty, Pokemon, Resident Evil, the Crew Motorfest, so racing games, horror games, really anything. I'll try it. I'm not huge on the games like Diablo. I don't know why. Top-down games, not super huge into it. I've tried a little of Baldur's Gate 3. Not super into it, but not gonna not knock it. So we're gonna talk about Pokemon. While we have some Call of Duty in the background, it's overall just gonna be me grinding up some levels, working on some camos. But let's start with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. So the base game, you are your character, you name them, dress them up a little bit. You can only My biggest gripe at the beginning of the game is the fact that you can only put on your own school outfits. There is no there's no alternative for that. You literally have what you have. There is no alternative. And that's it. The most that you can change is your hair, your helmet, and your face. That's about it. And it kind of stinks if you ask me. But I really liked not in Scarlet Violet, but I really liked how in Sword and Shield we had the opposite. We could pretty much do a lot more. We could customize it a lot more. I found that to be a lot more entertaining overall. So for me, the step back and only being able to customize my outfit to the school uniform was a step backwards. However, the gameplay formula going forward into open world versus the linear design that was Sword and Shield, as well as BDSP, which is Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. I really like that, and I like that it wasn't a blend of the two like it was with Legends Arceus. So I really like the open world design. It really kind of sucks that there wasn't any dungeon-like areas. So like, for example, Abyssal Ruins, or like, I'm forgetting the name, but Rayquaza's Tower, places that have specific puzzles for legendary Pokemon. It was weird that it was a fetch quest to get essentially the legendaries of the Treasures of Ruin. It's fine, but I didn't personally like it. It felt more like a grind than it did like an adventure. Looked up a YouTube video, Austin John plays on how to find them all, and I found them all in a matter of like maybe 20 to 30 minutes. Didn't really have fun with it. I was just kind of grinding it. But that open world design overall is okay. So like, if I gave it a score on like out of like 5, I give the character design a 3. Like, you get to customize some stuff, you don't get to customize a whole lot. Open world, I give it a out of 5, I'll give it a 4. Missing something, but overall it's pretty good. Not the biggest complaint with that open world is the fact that they just couldn't do something like Tears of the Kingdom, where they couldn't just perfect the art style to work with the open world design. So what we end up having is like a glitchy, buggy kind of mess, where frames drop, trees don't look very good, pixelation in weird spots. Overall, it's just something that the execution of the design is where it lacks, rather than the whole totality of design. And when we're looking at it as a whole, it feels like we're stuck in like 2017, where games have a good premise but they don't look very good. So I'm hoping with what comes next from Game Freak, they don't just settle with what's there. I hope they actually make use of the Switch 2 or whatever it's going to be. I hope they make use of it and really build something from the ground up, very similar to Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild. I mean, they aren't, when you put those under a microscope, those don't look great either, but they look so much better to the naked eye just based off of the fact that when you look at them, they look like they're meant for the Switch, and they don't look like they're hot garbage. Now, okay, we've talked about open world, maybe the design of the open world, and some character design. What about the Pokemon? What about the Pokemon design? Because that's also important. Base game, awesome. We had lots of cool Pokemon to come in. Flamingo Pokemon, Palmy, Capsaicin, like that Pokemon. The DLC adds more to this. Gives Dipplin and Apple and Appleton and all those. Gives it another evolution line, which is cool. Overall, the Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet are really cool. I find the designs of the Paradox Pokemon to be very interesting and cool. I'm not sure. I hope we see more of it. I would like to say we could see more in the future, but I think it's gonna be like a gimmick, like Mega Evolution. Or Ultra Beasts, like they're gonna be their own category. They're gonna just fall to the wayside. And if you never catch them here, you're not gonna be able to find them anywhere else outside of this game. Very similar to how Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Moon are. You're just gonna be kind of they're just gonna be lost to those games, and they might make appearances in like Pokemon Go, or they might have a special event in this before the total game ends. But overall, I think Paradox Pokemon, they look cool, the concept is cool, they look cool, but I don't think we'll see that going forward. I think I think it's gonna be a one game type of thing, unfortunately. But the designs of the Pokemon, Plain and Legendary, or Treasures of Ruin and Paradox, they all look good. No, there's not a whole lot of ones that make me go, wow, that's just a snow cone, or that's literally just a bag of trash. So I'm not shaking my head when I see some of these. I'm actually like, okay, that's an interesting concept. A little bit of lag here for you, that's great. So overall, the Pokemon designs, I give it a 4 out of 5. There's definitely some of them that are goofy looking. Relor, if you look at him upside down, just flip him upside down, you tell me what his face looks like. Tell me that's not a face of a murderer. Pokemon knew what they were doing when they added that guy in. So that alongside with the... What are some of the game changes? Well, I mentioned earlier the open world is a great game design change. But overall, the design of the game doesn't... It's really different because if you've played Pokemon before, you kind of have a linear path. So people who played the original Pokemon games, when they go into Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they may not really like the fact that it's really open world and that there is no direct or immediate progression that isn't entirely obvious. For example, in Pokemon X and Y, you spawn in your town, you do a little bit of story beat to explain what you're doing, and then you get told you need to go to the next town, beat the gym, and then you see some story beats of like, oh, this mysterious thing is happening. That's tried and true for the entire time of Pokemon. That's just how it's been, other than Legends Arceus. So Scarlet and Violet take the idea and they go, nah, okay, so you can do your own thing. You do not have to go directly to the next place. You could go all the way up to the top of the map, catch the most overpowered Pokemon you want, have fun doing it. It's gonna suck, but have fun. You do a little bit of story stuff, and then the game opens up and says you do this however you want to. I mean, there's kind of a path, but they're not really. Like you can jump from one side to the other, and then you have fun that way. So that overall is okay. It does make the story feel complicated at times. So there's 3 paths. The paths of You have the large raid Pokemon that are causing havoc, and that's your storyline with Arvin, one of your friends. And then you have your timeline, your friend path with Penny, and then you have the friend path with Nimona. So you have your champion one, the villain team one, as well as the boss Pokemon one. That's not exact. If you've played the games, you'll know what I'm talking about. I'm doing a very poor job at explaining them, but overall, you have these 3 stories. You can complete them if you complete them essentially in separate order of the way the game, I believe, intends you to complete them. You kind of do it disjointed. You essentially do all the lower level ones first. You do some of the medium ones second, and then at the end you kind of do all 3 simultaneously, and you're supposed to wrap them all up in a nice bow. For some reason, for me, I thought that was a sham, and I said, you know what? No, my idea was I'm going to play this how I want to, and I'm going to go to the one, to the next, and to the next, and the next. So I completed a whole path before moving on to the next one. So by the time I got to the gym leader, that was for like level 20. My team was like over 50 at that point. Like I had fought things that were much higher than it. I'd already done the whole thing with Penny and Arvin. So when I came to the gyms, I was just steamrolling them. Okay, y'all heard that, right? That was cool. So for me, it wasn't really that much of a challenge, especially for the last piece. But I guess that's the beauty of an open world game. You can do it how you want. I didn't do it exactly the way they kind of laid it out to be. I kind of did it my own way, and I guess that's the whole point. So you can do it whatever way you want. If you don't do it that way, I don't really think they penalize you for it. It's just a matter of how easy you want the game to be. And I decided to make the game kind of hard on myself, which is fine. Overall, I wasn't a huge fan of it. I like the linear games, but the story was okay. You see Arvin change over time. You see a little bit of Penny. Nimona was a pretty good rival comparison. I didn't like Hop from Sword and Shield, so Nimona was a good breath of fresh air. I didn't mind the Dawn equivalent in Legends Arceus, but she wasn't much of a pushover. She was pretty much a pushover to battling, and that wasn't too hard. There wasn't any battles in. I guess one of my more complaints with the battling and the leveling was there wasn't any time where I felt like I was severely underleveled for a major battle, say champion or during the DLC. The DLC was supposed to be, especially the Blueberry Academy stuff, was supposed to be like high level, like competitive level fight battles. And while some of them were definitely a little bit harder, I still didn't feel the need. I didn't feel like Cynthia in BDSP or in Diamond and Pearl level difficulty. I felt annoyed when something wasn't going exactly as planned, but all I had to do was swap out and just re-up or get adjusted to what they were doing or deny essentially any buffing they were trying to do. It wasn't inherently a hard game, which is fine, but a little bit of challenge, or maybe a challenge difficulty, like slider, maybe in the next couple games would do the game good. But not everybody agrees with that. Easy, it's for kids, so I don't expect them to make it hard, but I didn't mind it whenever it was hard for BDSP or for Diamond and Pearl. So that wasn't bad. So what about the overall story? Well, it's okay. Like I said, it's disjointed at times, but if you follow the paths in their own linear ways, it makes a lot more sense to me, especially, or it may not to you, but it did for me. So my preferred path may not be yours, but that's alright. At the end, I hear a lot of people saying that some of these characters are like some of the best, well-developed characters in Pokemon, which I can agree that I can see change in, especially Arvin and Penny, but Nimona the whole time is all about battling, which is fine, but it's not, they don't reinvent the wheel. It's Pokemon, so it's a bunch of kids talking about Pokemon things, and they don't always have a full concept of what's going on. Like there's something, the gravity of what we're talking about. We're talking about at some points multi-dimensional or time travel, and we're still cracking jokes. So these characters aren't that good. I much when I think of Pokemon, I think of like level of I don't know why, but the memory that always pops in my head is the first time I realized that the lakes had exploded in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Like that sheer moment of a regional event, just something exploded, or a team like did actually something pretty heinous and exploded 2 lakes. Even as a kid, I could go, man, that's pretty messed up. That's crazy. Like, what are all the Pokemon gonna do in those lakes? That's pretty messed up. That kind of level stuff doesn't really happen anymore. I think the last time that kind of happened was the ending of Sword and Shield, where Eternatus was essentially descending onto Galar. But in this, the events of it felt very isolated. People don't really know that you kind of prevented the time machine from destroying and from essentially causing havoc by importing Pokemon that were from the past or from the future. People don't really know about that. They just know you as champion, which is fine, but it's very interesting, the dynamic. So the story and the way it shapes out, it's fine. I'd give it a 3 or a 2. It's not something that really stood out to me. My biggest gripe with the whole story is the fact that there is a point of no return. The point of no return for this game is when you're going to Area 0 for the first time with your friends. If you do that, and you needed to do something while you're in Area 0, whether it be trade with a friend or, God forbid, you're doing VGC stuff, if you wanted to do any of that, you were completely screwed, because once you go into that, it doesn't warn you at all, but it's a point of no return where you cannot back out. You have to go through the entire story beat, which is a nearly 3 to 4 hour story beat, maybe 2.5 if you just mash the A button through all the text. And once you're in that, you're locked in for that. There is no escaping that unless you saved before and leave. And if you do that, you're losing the progress. So you could be 2 hours in, oh man, you want to battle your friend or trade, you're screwed. So that I didn't really like. They don't warn you. Now games nowadays tend to warn you. They're like, hey, this is a point of no return. Be warned that you can't do anything for a while. So that part I wasn't a huge fan of that. Area 0 as a whole, the music of Area 0 was very good. Very, very good. Pokemon music in general, for me, I'll listen to some of the retro stuff and I'm like, this hits the spot. Some stuff isn't as great as I remember it, but so far from what I've heard, from everything they've made with Legends Arceus, BDSP had some remixes in there. The music in Pokemon is good. It was good. So I'd give the music a say a 4 out of 5. So I'm kind of getting to an average of where these games are kind of like a 4, a 3.5, and a 4. That's the base game. So overall, yeah, I'd say about a 3.7. If I took the games just as their base, no DLC included, 3.7 out of 5. Because I really want to like it, but there's things that just hold it back a little bit that previous Pokemon games did better, or vice versa. So what about the DLC? What about what they could have improved on? So every Pokemon game doesn't have every Pokemon. There's 1,025 Pokemon now. So you can't expect every Pokemon game to have 1,025 different Pokemon in it. So how do they fix that? They add Pokemon in the DLC, the base game, from previous regions, from previous games. And I feel like the Pokemon they added in the DLC and in the base game are good. A good variety. Some of it feels like the same. We see Pikachu, we see Pikachu clones, some of the new favorites, Mimikyu. Those are more and more becoming commonplaces. Even in Sword and Shield, for some reason, instead of having all 3 of the Generation 1 starters until the DLC, of course, we were only able to see Charmander because it was a gift Pokemon, but it was a part of the Pokedex, which is weird. So we don't see any discrepancies like that, but I do notice that in the DLC, the legendary Pokemon that you receive via snack worth, so in the Indigo disc, at the end of it, or once you get access to the barbecue quests, or the blueberry quests, whatever they're called, you can go, once you do 12 group quests, and I think 10 individual, you can go and he'll talk to a guy named Snackworth. Snackworth will give you some snacks, where you can essentially go find older legendary Pokemon. So you can get Articuno, Moltres, Zapdos, Lugia, Ho-Oh, Sinnoh, the Kanto Birds, Johto Duck Beasts, Lugia, Ho-Oh, the Swords of Justice, Latios, Weather Trio, Sun and Moon, Gods. So you can get quite a few legendary Pokemon via this Snackworth guy, but they don't have Pokemon Dex entries, which is a shame because I really do like completing the Pokedex in each game, and I always find it interesting to see what each region classifies these legendary Pokemon as, what their version of how these Pokemon shape the world. These are legendary Pokemon, but they didn't get a mention in the Pokedex, and it seemed the side quest was very, I want to say it's fan service for people who don't have those Pokemon in Sword or in the Switch era, which is fine. But if you're gonna, I would much rather see these Pokemon have grandiose moments or areas. You could have put these Pokemon in dungeons that would have been really cool, very similar to the, say the Snow Temple ruins from Pokemon Legends Arceus, or just I'm trying to think of one. The Cave of Origin for Groudon and Kyogre in the original Hoenn games. Overall, things like that are really cool for people who like to catch the legendary Pokemon. These are, like I said, these are legendary Pokemon, so I feel like just having them planted somewhere on the map was weird. Didn't really do them service. It just felt like they threw them in last minute, like, oh yeah, people don't have these yet. Or it feels like they looked at a statistic and they said, oh yeah, 95% of the people who only have a Switch or never played anything else don't have these Pokemon. So instead of giving them any meaningful story for these the new generation of Pokemon players to experience, they just said, here you go. They're also not very size representative. Like Reshiram and Zekrom are like half the size of what I believe they would actually be. Like, if, say, God forbid, we get Legends Unova or we get a Unova game remakes, Reshiram and Zekrom are going to be huge in that game in comparison to this. I'm about as tall, our character is about as tall as them in the game, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, how can we be just as tall as the Yin and Yang trio or whatever they're called? So I found that weird. We shouldn't be as tall as these massive Pokemon that can shape universes and worlds. So yeah, that's a small disappointment, but overall the Pokemon they brought back were good. They gave evolutions to things like Duraludon, Dipplin, and Applin. They didn't really include anything with. They didn't really make anything special with the Hisui Pokemon, which, coming off the Tales of Legends Arceus, you'd think that we'd have a little bit more involvement in that. We did, however, get Blood Moon Ursaluna, which is cool. But that's just a variant, very much like Ash Greninja. It's not. Overall, it wasn't. It was a very cool like throwback to Pokemon's Legends Arceus, but it also felt like the second time around with Parent in Blueberry Indigo Disc, it wasn't as in depth, which was a shame. So overall, the Pokemon in the DLC that they brought back, which is one of the selling points for the DLC I've noticed over the last 2 years or so. It was okay. I mean, I think the only Pokemon we're missing now are that aren't fully officially ported into the new age of Pokemon are Patrat, Hot Watchhog, Simisage, Simipour, and Simiflare, or Simisear, as well as the pre-evolutions of those of Panpour, Pansage, and Pansear. And then Furfrou, I think, is the only one. Other than that, I think 90% of the Pokemon that have ever existed are available on the Switch. You just gotta do a little bit of work, and then the older ones you gotta go find. You gotta somehow trade or use the 3DS to get. What about the story? The story for the DLC is a lot better because they're more. With these smaller locations, they are more centralized. So the story, especially if you played the Teal Mask literally is 90% story. It's not like a dungeon, but it's very focused on the story. For the Indigo Disc, it's very much like a standard Pokemon game. Here's the Elite Four of this academy, go fight them. Once you defeat them, then there is a linear story that happens down in the Area Zero Underdepths. But you have to do something else to get to that, which is weird. It felt weird. It felt kind of disjointed that we had to be the champion of Blueberry Academy for Professor Blair to be, hey, by the way, now that you have defeated Kieran, we are going to go on an adventure with Kieran, and that's a story beat in there about him losing, and so I guess in that sense that does make some sense, but it didn't. It felt weird that we had to essentially, for both DLCs that were supposed to be focused on Ogerpon and Terapagos, they made you go to the very, very end of both DLCs to get those Pokemon and to truly understand what those Pokemon can do. So by the time you're done with the DLC, you don't really get to use Ogerpon in any big battles, and you don't really get to use Terapagos in any big battles. You don't have any story beat where you essentially have to fight with them or earn their trust. You essentially just have to defeat them or play a story beat, and then boom, they're given to you. And the epilogue is almost the exact same way. Epilogue is a little bit more interesting because it is kind of the island of Kitakami is overrun by this poisonous curse or whatever Pitcherrunt is, essentially infecting these people with a curse, causing them to become delirious and just start shouting mochi mochi, which is weird, and they do a chicken dance. The chicken dance disease, as I will call it. So they all get the chicken dance disease, and then we find out that it's caused by a Pokemon. We chase the Pokemon down, and I defeat it, and you get it. So all three of the story beats, or all three of the main story beats, have pretty much the same concept. Go here, do this, beat the story, watch some cutscenes, and you'll get given the DLC Pokemon at the end. They don't have any major things like in Pokemon Black and White where you had to catch Reshiram or Zekrom and then you had to use them to defeat Getsis, or an X and Y where you had to defeat Yveltal or Xerneas to prevent and then use them to defeat Lysander. So there was none of that. It was the other way around. You defeated them and you got them, but there was no bonus or any extra climactic moment that really showcases their power. I will say the battle with Terapagos was a very fun battle. It was very intense, and the essentially the world building that they were setting up for the battle, the large scale of it, the surrounding nature, the music, the overall atmosphere of the battle was very good. But like I said, you didn't really get to use them in any way. You kind of just got to collect them and throw them in a box. And I don't like that. I'd much rather be able to find myself bonding with this legendary creature. If it's so important that we catch it, and it's so important that we've specifically gotten this thing, it should be something that if we catch it, we should be able to utilize it, and it should be a moment of, I have tamed the beast, and therefore we are now using it to defeat the greater evil. I guess in theory you could say you could really use Terapagos and you can use Ogerpon in the fight against Pitcherrunt, but Pitcherrunt was only level 88. It was only the island of Kitakami. I mean, that gripe is just a personal gripe for story beats to me. Other people may really like it and they say, "Oh, I don't want to." So for example, I liked the Isle of Armor DLC from Pokemon Sword and Shield because essentially you played a story beat into the Isle of Armor, but eventually you got given a Cubfu. Cubfu is the mythical Pokemon for that DLC or legendary. I don't really know what they consider it, but you essentially take this Pokemon and you raise it up. You get to choose its evolution path. You get to uh, pick what fighting style it learns, what move, what typing it evolves into, and then you have a final battle with its original trainer to showcase that you are strong and you have raised it and you are pure of heart with this Pokemon. That was a good experience. That's very much an experience that I enjoyed. But that wasn't the experience that we got at all with Scarlet and Violet and or its DLCs. So if for the stories of Scarlet and Violet, I would give them a 3. I would only say 3.5 to 4 for the DLCs. They're not they're fun to an extent. Overall, I think the sum of it's not each part should be graded as a whole. My whole point at the end of this is I want to grade it as the sum of its parts because I think for new players coming into Pokemon, Scarlet and Violet is fantastic. I mean, I've nitpicked things here, but overall, I find the games to be relatively fun. This is one of the first times I felt really invigorated to really complete the Pokedex, like on my own, not ask for friends to trade me these Pokemon uh, that I don't have, or I mean, there's times where I've used Home to speed up the process, and that's just because it's older Pokemon, not necessarily newer ones. So like all the newer ones, I caught on my own. Those are all mine. I might have used an older Pokedex entry or an older Pokemon from an older game to help speed up the process of catching another uh, another 7 EVs and then evolving them all into Sylveon, Espeon, Umbreon, like all that. So Scarlet and Violet were pretty good. The DLCs made it better, and it makes me wonder what comes next for Pokemon because we went from linear slash open world with Sword and Shield to 90% open world with Legends Arceus, and then strictly linear with BDSP, back to open world, fully open world with Scarlet and Violet. And I'm not somebody who's very good at speculating on what will be or what is the likelihood. I don't have any inside information on what the next games will be, but I am very interested to see what they are because we're in line to either get a remake of Johto games, remakes of Unova, or a completely new generation. If I had to guess, I'd imagine we're probably going to get a remake of Unova. There's a lot of things that point to that, but that's just a theory. Yes, Matt Pat, everybody does it, even the little guy. Um, so overall, I think I'd give Scarlet and Violet a 4 out of 5. It's really welcoming for new players. And when you look at that in that sense, it's really appealing because Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, they're kind of the opposite. They're very hard. They don't really handhold. So when if you were an experienced Pokemon player at the time, you loved it. But the people who just got into it and didn't really understand typing matchups or anything like that, those games kind of knocked you on your ass. But with Scarlet and Violet, they've made it very open to, and I guess the adjustments of Pokemon overall in the last couple of years have kind of helped people be more into Pokemon and be interested in trying Pokemon. Whereas um, it's hard to learn the other stuff if you're new to it. So um, I think overall it's a 4 out of 5. I mean, maybe that reasoning doesn't make a whole lot of sense because I've been nitpicking. But when I look at the totality, the Pokemon they've brought in, the designs of them, the story being okay at best, but the battling and the the battling, the music, the overall gameplay loop, um, it all averages out to be a 4 out of 5, and that's a low 4. That's not I'm saying this is so close to a 5 that this is almost perfect. No, it's more like a low 4 where I'm like it could have been a 3.5. Um, which maybe that's a little harsh, but we're in an age where these Pokemon games we do need to upgrade them. Uh, Legends Arceus look great in my opinion, and I feel like Scarlet and Violet kind of a step back. The intensity of Legends Arceus was awesome. This is definitely a more mild approach for some of the topics in Scarlet and Violet. So that's my thoughts on it. Overall, I give Pokemon Scarlet and Violet and its DLCs, as well as the epilogue for the DLC, give it a 4 out of 5. If you agree with me, I'd like to know in the comments. Feel free to let me know. Tell me what your favorite parts is. Tell me what you like, dislike. Tell me what you think. Overall, if you comment, I'm gonna definitely respond with my reasoning or why I would feel the one way or another. Uh, Definitely a good conversation to have. By no means, I don't think these games are perfect, and I don't think they're the worst games of all time. Uh, I don't. Overall, they're very in the middle, but they're very approachable. They're very approachable for new fans. As an existing fan, I've played throughout the years. Uh, Overall, I enjoyed it. There was times where I was like, why would we? Why is this a thing? Why is this dialogue existing? Uh, why wasn't that battle a little bit harder? Why was that battle overly long? Why'd they use Stonewall Pokemon? Like, there's little questions here and there that make me question my sanity. But overall, the games are all right. Um, other people are gonna ride Pokemon until they die, and they're never gonna be critical about it because it's their game. But I tend to look at it more critical sense, just like Call of Duty. I love Call of Duty, but sometimes they make really dumb decisions. I love Pokemon, but sometimes they make really dumb decisions. Hopefully, we begin to see some better decisions, but that's always up for debate, and that's not up in my hands. That is entirely in Game Freak's. So if you like a video like this where you just listen to me ramble, rant, and do a small review on Pokemon or any game that exists, feel free to give it a like, subscribe, comment. Uh, Let me know your thoughts. So thank you and have a wonderful day. And then I'll see you guys next time.